I told her, if you take that trip with him, I'm done. She laughed, packed her bikinis, and spent 3 days away with her old college boyfriend. When she returned and saw who had moved into her home, she began to shake. But the truth about her perfect getaway would break her for good. My name is Warren Ellison. I'm 47, and I've worked as an aviation maintenance technician at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport for 15 years. It's honest work with steady pay, keeping planes flying and families safe. I believed my marriage was just as solid until my wife, Penelope, decided to see how far she could push me. That Tuesday morning, she walked downstairs holding 2 swimsuits, like evidence in a courtroom. One was modest and red, the other had barely enough fabric to cover anything. Her dark hair was styled, her makeup was flawless, and the look in her eyes told me she planned to stir up trouble. "Which one makes me look freer?" she asked, raising the tiny black bikini. I didn't ask who she wanted to impress. We both knew. "Penny," I said, using the nickname I'd called her for 24 years. "Are you going swimming or putting on a show?" She laughed, but it wasn't the laugh I'd fallen for in college. This one sounded sharp and deliberate. "Come on, Warren. Bryce and I are only catching up. We haven't really talked in years." Bryce Redmond was her college boyfriend, and he'd been slipping back into her life like oil through a bad engine seal. Every time his name appeared on her phone, her whole face lit up. Then came the new clothes, the new perfume, and all that talk about finding herself at 46. I put down my coffee and looked her in the eyes. "If you go on that trip with him, I'm out." I didn't yell or make a scene. I said it calmly, like I was giving her the weather report. Penelope stood still for about 3 seconds before a smug smile crossed her face. "You're not serious, Warren. You don't give ultimatums. You're Mr. Steady, remember? Mr. Fix everything quietly." I gave a slow nod. "Exactly. That's why you should listen." She shook her head and turned away. "I need this trip, Warren. I need to remember who I was before I became only this." She waved toward our kitchen, our house, and the life we'd built. "And what am I supposed to be while you remember?" I asked. "You'll be here," she replied without looking at me. "You always are." That was when I understood. She didn't merely take me for granted. She had forgotten I could walk away from everything. For 24 years, I'd been dependable, patient, and focused on fixing problems instead of causing them. She confused that patience with weakness. That afternoon, I watched her pack while singing along to music, meant for someone half her age. She posted vague messages online about fresh starts and new adventures. Before leaving, she kissed my cheek as casually as if she were going to the store. "Don't stay up too late while I'm gone," she called over her shoulder. "You still have your tools and sports center, right?" I said nothing. From the window, I watched her Uber vanish down the street, taking my wife toward another man and away from everything we had built. Then I went to my workshop and opened a drawer I'd hoped never to use. Inside sat an envelope with Plan D written across it in my handwriting. Sometimes the quietest men make the biggest moves. 3 hours after Penelope's flight left, I was parked outside Pemberton and Associates law firm. The envelope on the passenger seat had been waiting 6 months for that exact moment. Some men search for an extinguisher after the house catches fire. Smart men have one ready beforehand. The envelope held everything: property transfers, trust restructuring papers, and lease agreements. Every document was legal, complete, and final. I learned years ago that preparation beats panic every time. My phone buzzed with a text from my niece, Taryn. "Uncle Warren, is it time?" I replied. "It's time. Are you ready?" "Nadine is already on her way. Keys are on the kitchen counter. Spare bedroom. You know what to do." Taryn had been my backup plan for months. She was 25, sharp as a tack, and never liked how Penelope treated me. When I asked her to help arrange the weekend, she only said, "What took you so long?" The law office looked just as I expected. Dark wood, heavy books, and the smell of expensive decisions. Pemberton was thin and gray-haired, with a handshake that suggested he had seen every kind of human disaster. "Mr. Ellison," he said from behind his desk, "are you sure you want to do this?" I handed him the envelope. "Every document is signed, witnessed, and notarized. I just need them filed with the proper offices." Pemberton opened the packet and studied each page. The property transfer moved our house from joint ownership into a trust I had created years earlier. The lease made Elowen Hartley, a woman I knew through Taryn's college connections, a legal tenant in our home. Every detail had been planned. "This is thorough," Pemberton said. "Your wife will have no legal way to fight it." None. She approved the trust structure in 2019 during our estate planning. She said she didn't need to read the fine print because she trusted me. I nearly smiled. Apparently, trust worked both ways. Pemberton nodded. "The filings will be processed Monday morning. Everything should be active before she returns." I stood and shook his hand. "I appreciate your discretion." "Of course, but what if she comes home early?" I headed for the door. She won't. She's having too much fun posting pictures of her freedom. Outside, I checked my phone. Penelope had uploaded another Instagram post, an airport selfie captioned, "Adventure awaits." She had no idea that while she chased her past, I was erasing her future. After 24 years of marriage, I knew Penelope always underestimated quiet men. This mistake would cost her everything. I drove back to the empty house, and for the first time in months, it felt peaceful. The first vacation photos appeared Saturday morning. Penelope had always loved social media, but that weekend she posted like her life depended on it. Every shot was staged to show me what I was missing. The first showed her beside a resort pool in a bright red bikini, drink in hand. The caption read, "Finally, living my life." I examined the image like a damaged aircraft part, carefully searching for details others might overlook. Then I saw it. Reflected in her oversized sunglasses, almost invisible unless you knew where to look, was a table set for 3, not 2. 3 wine glasses, 3 plates, and a man's hand that definitely wasn't Bryce's. Bryce wore a cheap, split-screen digital watch. The reflected hand had a gold Rolex, and the skin looked older and rougher. Someone else was paying for this vacation. Someone Penelope hadn't mentioned. I saved the photo and zoomed in until the pixels began to break apart. In the corner of the reflected table sat a bottle I recognized. Opus 1 Cabernet. $800 a bottle. Bryce Redmond was a personal trainer who drove a 10-year-old Honda. He wasn't buying wine worth more than his monthly car payment. My phone rang. It was Taryn. "Uncle Warren, you need to see this. I'm sending a link." The link opened the resort's restaurant page. The terrace at sunset. Exclusive dining. Reservations only. Dress code required. I called the resort. "Terrace reservations. This is Raphael. I'm trying to reach my wife. She's dining there tonight. Penelope Ellison. I'm sorry, sir, but no one by that name is on tonight's reservation list. She may be using her maiden name, Penelope Harrow. No Harrow either, sir. What about the man she's with? Bryce Redmond. No reservation under Redmond." I ended the call with my jaw clenched. She wasn't only cheating. Someone with serious money was financing the whole thing. a man who could wine and dine my wife while keeping his name off the reservation. Then the second photo appeared. Penelope was standing on the beach, but the background exposed another lie. The logo on the umbrellas belonged to the Ritz-Carlton, not the Holiday Inn she had told me about. Someone was paying top dollar for my wife's affair and wanted to remain hidden. In 24 years of marriage, Penelope had never lived at the Ritz-Carlton level. Whoever the third man was, he had deep pockets and no morals. I forwarded the photos to Pemberton with one message. Speed it up. File everything first thing Monday. Some discoveries change your plans. This one only proved mine was right. Sunday evening, Elowen Hartley arrived at my door with one suitcase, and the calm confidence of someone who had survived the worst life could throw at her. At 54, she was elegant, without trying to look younger, and intelligent, without needing to prove it. "Mr. Ellison," she said, offering a firm handshake, "thank you for this opportunity." Taryn had found Elowen through her university contacts. She was a former real estate executive, recently widowed, with no drama or baggage. She needed a peaceful place to rebuild her life. I needed someone strong enough to face whatever Penelope might do. "Call me Warren," I said, stepping aside. "Welcome home." Elowen walked through the house like she was inspecting a property. She wasn't judging anything. She was simply taking it all in. In the kitchen, she ran her fingers across the granite counters Penelope had demanded, but rarely cleaned. In the living room, she arranged the throw pillows that had been lying around for months. "Your wife has interesting taste," Elowen said carefully. "Had," I corrected. Past tense. She nodded, as if she understood everything. "The lease Taryn showed me is very detailed. 6-month minimum, utilities included, and the first month already paid." "That's right." I handed her the keys. "And Elowen, whatever happens when Penelope returns, don't negotiate with her. This is your home now. I'll deal with the drama." Elowen smiled, and for the first time in months, I remembered how peaceful it felt to be around a woman who didn't demand constant attention. "I've been divorced, Warren. I know how this works. Women like your wife think they can scare other women into leaving." Her smile sharpened. "She's never met anyone like me." That evening, I helped Elowen move into the master bedroom. She had brought her own bedding, artwork, and even a coffee maker. By the time we were finished, the room looked nothing like the one Penelope had abandoned. "One question," Elowen said, as I walked toward the guest room. "Why are you being so generous to someone you barely know?" I stopped in the doorway. "Because you weren't the one who broke my marriage vows, and because every man deserves to come home to someone who actually wants to be there." Elowen's expression softened. "She has no idea what she's throwing away, does she?" "No," I said, "but she's about to learn." Pemberton called Monday morning to confirm that every document had been filed and every legal protection was active. Penelope's flight was due to land at 3:47 that afternoon. I would be at work when she arrived, doing what I always did, keeping planes in the air while everything around me fell apart. The difference was that this time, I wasn't falling with it. Tuesday afternoon, I was working inside an open maintenance panel on a Boeing 737 when my phone started buzzing like an angry wasp. Penelope had called 6 times, left 3 voicemails, and sent a stream of messages that went from confused to furious to desperate within 20 minutes. The first one said, "Why won't the garage open? Did you change the code?" Then came, "Warren, this isn't funny. I'm exhausted, and I just want to come home." The final message read, "Call me back right now." I didn't. I had a hydraulic system to inspect, and honestly, Watching her panic from a distance felt better than I expected. Around 4 o'clock, Taryn called. "Uncle Warren, you need to hear what happened. Your wife came to the house and couldn't get inside. She spent 20 minutes trying old codes, checking windows, and searching the hidden key spot. Then she rang the bell. I could see Penelope on her own porch like a stranger, still in vacation clothes and oversized sunglasses, expecting the house to welcome her back, as if nothing had changed." Elowen answered, Taryn continued. She stayed polite and told Penelope to contact the property manager about access. Apparently, I was the property manager. Elowen even gave her my number. I smiled. She was handling it perfectly, calm, legal, and impossible to shake. What did Penelope do? She started yelling that it was her house and demanded to know who Elowen was. Elowen said she was the current tenant, then closed the door. Penelope called me next, screaming about theft, lawyers, and how I couldn't lock her out of her own home. I told her everything was legal and that she should have read the papers she signed. By 5:30, her calls stopped. Then a message arrived from an unknown number. "This is Malcolm Graves, Mrs. Ellison's attorney. We need to discuss this matter immediately." I forwarded it to Pemberton with 2 words. "Game time." He called within minutes. "Warren, I spoke with Graves. He's making plenty of threats, but none of them have teeth. Everything we filed is solid." "What did you tell him?" "That his client gave up her property rights in 2019, and leaving the residence triggered the trust clause. He started quoting marital property law until I reminded him the house was never held as marital property. It has always belonged to the trust." That night I drove past the house after work. I had lived there for 15 years, built my workshop, planted the trees, and repaired everything that broke. Now warm light filled the windows, and someone inside truly wanted to be there. Penelope's car sat across the street. She was behind the wheel, staring at the house as if she could force the locks to change back. I continued to my rental apartment 2 blocks away. Soon, Penelope would learn that some choices couldn't be reversed. Honestly, I was already sleeping better than I had in months. Wednesday morning, she chose the nuclear option. Penelope hired Malcolm Graves, the kind of lawyer who advertised on bus benches and promised to fight for your rights. His office smelled of cheap cologne and desperation. Pemberton had warned me. Men like Graves survive on threats and bluster. Once that fails, they usually fold. He called at 7 a.m. while I was getting ready for work. "Mr. Ellison, this is Malcolm Graves, representing your wife. You have 24 hours to restore Mrs. Ellison's access to the marital residence, or will request emergency relief." I had expected the call. "Mr. Graves, check the property records before filing anything. That house hasn't been marital property since 2019. "Sir, I don't care what paperwork trick you think you've pulled. Washington law still protects marital assets. The house is held in an irrevocable trust your client willingly signed," I interrupted. "A trust clause she activated by leaving the residence for over 48 hours without notice." Silence followed. "We'll see about that," he finally said. 2 hours later, Pemberton called me at work. Graves filed the emergency motion. The judge reviewed the documents and dismissed it without a hearing. He told Graves to do his homework before wasting the court's time. What happens now? They'll probably claim fraud or duress and try to void the trust documents. Can they? No. Penelope had signed every document before witnesses, with her own lawyer present, then waited through the required 7-day review period. That afternoon, Elowen called me. "Warren, your wife came back. This time she brought a locksmith." "What happened?" "I called the police and showed them my lease and ID proving this is my legal address. The officers told Mrs. Ellison that forcing her way inside could be considered breaking and entering. How did she react? Badly. She screamed that I was a home wrecker and said you couldn't replace her with a stranger. The officers weren't impressed. That evening, Taryn sent me one of Penelope's Facebook posts. When someone you trusted for 24 years destroys your life while you're trying to find yourself. Some people aren't who you believed they were. Hashtag betrayed. Hashtag heartbroken. Hashtag homeless. The comments were merciless. Her sister wrote, "Actions have consequences, Penelope." Her college friend added, "Girl, you made your bed." Even her yoga instructor said, "Maybe use this time for self-reflection." I closed the app and leaned back. Penelope had spent years creating the image of a perfect wife. Now the mask was slipping, and everyone could see what was underneath. My phone buzzed with one final message from her. "Please, Warren, can we talk? I made a mistake, but this is too much." For the first time since it began, I answered. "You didn't make a mistake, Penelope. You made a choice. Now live with it." Then I blocked her number. Some bridges are worth burning. Thursday evening, Elowen and I were having dinner when Penelope finally found the nerve to confront us directly. We sat at my kitchen table, in my house, eating a meal Elowen had made from scratch when the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Elowen said, wiping her hands on a napkin. "You sure? It's probably." "I know exactly who it is," she replied, rising. "It's time we were properly introduced." The front door opened, followed by Penelope's sharp, demanding voice. "Who the hell are you, and what are you doing in my house?" Elowen answered calmly. "I'm Elowen Hartley. I live here. And you are. I'm Penelope Ellison, and this is my house." "I'm afraid you're mistaken," Elowen said. "This residence is legally leased to me. You should contact the property manager." I moved to the living room doorway, far enough back to stay out of it, but close enough to step in if necessary. Penelope stood on the porch wearing designer clothes that screamed expensive vacation. Anger and disbelief colored her face. "Warren!" she yelled when she spotted me. "Tell this woman to leave our house." "It isn't our house anymore, Penelope," I said quietly. "You made sure of that when you chose a weekend with Bryce over 24 years of marriage. I made a mistake. People make mistakes, Warren." "No." I stepped beside Elowen. "A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. You made a deliberate choice to throw away everything we built." Penelope looked between us, and I saw the moment she understood. Elowen and I didn't seem like a landlord and tenant. We were relaxed and natural together like two people who had already found a rhythm. "You're sleeping with her," Penelope whispered, her voice cracking. Elowen answered before I could. "Where I sleep is none of your business. What should concern you is that you're trespassing on private property." "Trespassing? This is insane. Warren, you can't replace me with some stranger." "I didn't replace you," I said. "You left. I moved on." Then Penelope began to cry. The ugly, desperate kind that comes when someone realizes they've lost something they can't recover. "Please," she begged. "I'll end it with Bryce. I'll come home. We can get counseling. We can fix this." I studied her standing there in her vacation clothes, wearing jewelry I had never seen before, probably bought by her mysterious benefactor. She looked desperate, lost, and almost like a stranger to me. "Penelope," I said gently, "there's nothing left to save. You broke it beyond repair." Elowen stepped forward. "Mrs. Ellison, it's time for you to leave. Any legal concerns should go through your attorney." Penelope looked between us once more, then turned and walked away. I watched her climb into a rental car. Apparently, she had left her own vehicle at the airport. "Well," Elowen said, as she shut the door. That went better than expected. Better? She smiled. She could have thrown a rock through the window. We went back to dinner, but something had changed. The confrontation was over, and Penelope finally understood that her old life was gone. Friday morning, Pemberton called with news that changed everything. Warren, you should sit down. My investigator finished looking into your wife, and it's worse than we thought. I was in my airport workshop, surrounded by aircraft parts and diagnostic equipment. The familiar smell of metal and hydraulic fluid somehow made the news easier to hear. How much worse? The man in the resort photos isn't just some wealthy stranger. His name is Dominic Belandi. He owns Belandi Construction, has a wife and 3 children, and is under federal investigation for bid rigging and tax evasion. I lowered my wrench. A federal investigation? It gets worse. Your wife has been depositing cash into a secret account for 6 months. $25,000 so far, always in amounts below the federal reporting limit. Everything began making sense. Penelope's sudden girls' nights, the jewelry, new clothes, and expensive tastes she had never shown before. She wasn't only cheating, she was being paid. Pemberton, what does that mean legally? It means she could be involved in money laundering. And when the FBI comes looking, and they will, you need to be as far from this as possible. That afternoon, I called Elowen. We need to talk tonight. Something serious came up. How serious? Federal investigation serious. When I got home, Elowen was waiting with coffee and a worried look. Tell me, she said. I explained everything. Dominic Belandi, the cash, and the investigation. Elowen listened quietly, her expression growing more serious with every detail. Warren, she said when I finished, do you understand what this could mean? That Penelope is in serious trouble. And you might be too. Spouses can be questioned about each other's financial crimes, especially if investigators wonder what you knew and when you knew it. I hadn't considered that. What should I do? Document everything, bank records, credit card statements, anything proving you knew nothing about those payments. Then report it before the authorities discover it themselves. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the woman I had married 24 years earlier, the smart, funny, honest college student I once knew. How had she become someone who accepted money from a married man under federal investigation? Saturday morning, I made 2 calls. First, I told Pemberton to cooperate fully with any federal inquiry. Then I contacted the FBI field office in Seattle. Special Agent Rodriguez speaking. Agent Rodriguez, my name is Warren Ellison. I have information about Dominic Belandi that you need to hear. Some marriages end with shouting, lawyers, or tears. Mine was ending with federal agents and possible money laundering charges. At least it was ending honestly, which was more than I could say about the way Penelope had lived it. 3 weeks later, Special Agent Rodriguez called with an update that made everything clear. Mr. Ellison, we've arrested Dominic Belandi and 3 associates on federal charges. Your wife's name came up during questioning. I was home with Elowen, enjoying the quiet Sunday morning that had become our routine. Coffee, a newspaper, and real conversation instead of constant complaints and demands. What charges? I asked. Money laundering, tax evasion, and bribing public officials. Belandi paid city council members to secure construction contracts. Your wife appears to have acted as one of his intermediaries. Elowen looked up from her crossword, concern filling her eyes. Agent Rodriguez, what does that mean for Penelope? She could face federal charges as an accessory. We found more than $40,000 in payments routed through her personal accounts. She claims she didn't know their purpose, but the evidence says otherwise. That afternoon, Taryn called with news from Penelope's family. Uncle Warren, Aunt Penelope was arrested. Agents took her from her sister's house this morning. How is she handling it? Badly. She keeps demanding to speak with you. She says you're the only person who can help. I glanced at Elowen, who had heard my side of the call. She slowly shook her head. Taryn, tell her to contact her attorney. I can't help her with this. She doesn't have one anymore. Graves dropped her when the federal charges appeared. That evening, my phone rang from an unknown number. The background noise told me it was a jail call. Warren? Penelope sounded small and broken. Please don't hang up. What do you want, Penelope? I need help. I need a lawyer and bail money. I never wanted any of this to happen. What did you expect when you accepted money from a man under federal investigation? I didn't know. Dominic never mentioned an investigation. He said he was paying me for companionship. Payment for companionship, I repeated slowly. Penelope, do you understand what you're describing? She went silent, then began crying softly. I need money for an attorney, she whispered. I can't give you that. You're my husband. You have to help me. Ex-husband. The divorce became final yesterday, while you were being arrested. The line fell silent, except for her breathing. Warren, please. I know I made mistakes, but I never meant to hurt you. Penelope, I said gently, you didn't only hurt me. You traded 24 years of trust for money from a criminal. That wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. What am I supposed to do? That isn't my problem anymore. But I'll give you one piece of free advice. Tell the truth to anyone willing to listen. It may be your only chance. I ended the call and turned off my phone. Elowen reached across the table and took my hand. You did the right thing. Did I? Yes, you can't save someone who refuses to save herself. Outside, snow began falling, covering everything in clean white silence. 6 months later, I stood in the backyard of my house, truly mine now, watching Elowen plant roses, where Penelope's neglected vegetable garden once sat. The difference was impossible to miss. Careful planning instead of impulsive planting. Something beautiful and lasting instead of another project abandoned after a few weeks. Pass me that watering can, Elowen said, brushing dirt from her gloves. I handed it to her, amazed by how natural everything felt. Elowen didn't need constant attention or excitement. She enjoyed simple things, a good book, a home-cooked dinner, or watching planes rise into the evening sky from our back porch. Any news about the trial? She asked. Pemberton called this morning. Penelope accepted a plea deal. 3 years in federal prison and full restitution to the government. Elowen kept working on the roses. How do you feel? Relieved, honestly. It's finally finished. The doorbell rang. Taryn stood on the porch beside Grant Hollowell, Elowen's son, and, since last month, Taryn's fiancé. Their relationship had grown naturally while helping us through the transition. Watching them together reminded me what a real partnership looked like. Uncle Warren, Taryn said, hugging me. We have news. Good news, I hope. Grant smiled. We picked a date. June 15th. We'd like to have the wedding here in the backyard if you and Mom agree. Elowen appeared beside me, dirt still covering her hands, and the widest smile I had seen since her husband died. A garden wedding, she said. I love it. That evening, the 4 of us sat on the porch watching planes descend toward the airport. I had seen the same view for 15 years, but everything around it had changed. Instead of hearing complaints about noise and air quality, we discussed travel plans, wedding details, and Elowen's idea to turn the spare bedroom into an office. Warren, Grant said, I want to thank you for everything you've done for my mother. After Dad died, she never thought she would feel at home again. She saved me too, I replied, taking Elowen's hand. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to a man is discovering he's stronger Then he believed. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. For a second, I wondered if Penelope had found a way to contact me from prison. It was Bryce Redmond. Heard about Penelope. Sorry, man. Hope you're doing okay. I showed Elowen. She raised an eyebrow. Are you going to answer? Nope. I deleted the message. That chapter is closed. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, I realized something important about marriage. It isn't about finding someone who will never leave. It's about creating a life worth staying for, with someone who truly wants to share it. Penelope left because she believed the grass was greener somewhere else. In the end, she discovered it was artificial turf, expensive, fake, and empty. Elowen stayed because she understood that real happiness comes from building something honest with someone who values it as much as you do. At 47, I was beginning again. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be.